The Sigma MC-11 adapter has been out for quite a while, but there's still a lot of questions about it. Some of them are answered fairly well in other YouTube videos. Some of them, there's more information that maybe could be given. I know I had questions when I first was looking into this, and even after I got my hands on it. And it's both an excellent adapter if you're switching systems, but also one that has some shortcomings, which I'm going to discuss in this video. So, a little background: I've been a hobby photographer for a lot of years, and in the last couple of years decided to get more serious about it, and my first foray into that was the Canon EOS R, and I started accumulating some EF lenses to go with some RF ones that I had gotten, and I had always sort of wondered about the Sony Alpha system, and then more recently this year got my hands on the A7 IV. But of course, anytime you're switching camera systems, the big concern is, oh man, I have to start my lens collection over again, and I've already got all this money into this other system, and I'm not necessarily going to get very much for some of these lenses, selling them secondhand. How do I overcome that? And so it was an attractive and exciting option at first to think that, you know, I could take a lot of those EF lenses, which for the Canon was the bulk of my lens collection, was EF adapted lenses as it was. So, you know, I went into it thinking, well, it's not going to be a big deal to have the extra length of this adapter on my Sony camera, because on these lenses I'm already used to having to have the EF to RF adapter as it is. I had a Tamron lens or two, but also a Sigma Art lens, and so I was pretty well assured, it was on the compatibility list for this adapter, that that Sigma Art lens would be one that it would work natively, as they said, but I was also curious to see if the Tamron lenses would work as well. One thing that I think is a little misleading in Sigma's literature about this adapter is they say in the manual that as long as the lens you're attaching to it is a Sigma lens that's on their compatible list, it makes it function as a native E-mount lens, which would lend you to believe you could get all of the functionality that an E-mount lens would have. Now, as far as shooting photos goes, I would say that that's a pretty fair statement. When I attached the Sigma Art lens, the 24-70, to this adapter and used it on the Sony, in photo mode, I did get eye focus, continuous autofocus seemed to work. Its ability to lock on very quickly seemed pretty much the same as my experience as with my Canon EOS R. So in that regard, I was really impressed with this adapter and totally felt like I had made the right choice. But the challenge came when I went into video mode, where it kept telling me in the menus that continuous autofocus was grayed out and not available with this lens. And I was kind of confused, because I was like, this lens, I've triple checked, is on Sigma's compatibility list for this adapter, and it just said in the manual that if it's compatible, it's like a native E-mount lens, and any E-mount lens that I've ever seen can do continuous autofocus in video. So what was the deal? Well, long story short, I did find in the fine print somewhere on Sigma's website about this, that little asterisk under all of its other marketing language, that you have to manually focus for video. That was a pretty big letdown, because obviously the Sigma Art lens was my first lens, more or less, that I could use on the A7 IV. I thought with this adapter that I was able to share a bunch of my lenses that would give me a huge head start into the Sony ecosystem. Yeah, a lot of people that you talk to about it, if you talk about using adapted lens from other systems, they get bristly, and, you know, they're like, oh, that's a terrible way to go forward. Definitely get E-mount lenses. And you're like, yeah, that's longer term the plan, but it is really nice to have lenses that if you have two different camera systems, that you could share those lenses and that they would work pretty equally well. And in photo mode, like I said, for the Sigma lens, that was true. I even took a 35mm Tamron lens that I had and used this adapter with it, and it didn't work quite as well as the Sigma lens, but the autofocusing was still good. I just noticed that it didn't seem to save all the EXIF data, so when I pulled those photos into Lightroom, it didn't have the lens profile automatically coming up, because it wasn't apparently able to identify the Tamron lens that was attached to it. It's sort of a shame, because especially the A7 IV is widely considered a great hybrid camera, so it's for somebody who also wants to do video. And if you make the mistake that I did of thinking that an adapter like this would allow you to just take a great lens that you have that's expensive for your other system and pull it onto the Sony system and be able to do everything with it, not exactly. Yeah, you could manually focus to do video, but I find for talking head style videos like this, that can be a little tricky because the camera is far enough away from me that to adjust it continuously and come back to my seat and hope that I've got onto my face properly, it is a fair bit of trial and error that I'm just not really that interested in. I know some people do it. Some people swear by manual focus exclusively in video. That's not really what I'm looking for. And so this is a bit of a letdown in that way, as is the fact that it's not weather sealed. I know that's not a major feature for you would think of for an adapter, but on the A7 IV body that boasts that it is weather sealed, and then if you're getting weather sealed lenses, then this becomes the weak point in that whole system, because now this introduces the possibility for moisture or dust to get up in the connection between the body and the lens. I have read in other reviews that the Metabones 4 or 5, whatever version they're up to most recently, adapter that does a similar thing to this is weather sealed. And so while it is considerably more expensive than this adapter, that's something to consider. And I've also read people say that it can, with a lot of lenses, do continuous autofocus in video. So if you are shopping lenses for this kind of purpose, where you want to go from, say, Canon to Sony, you may want to consider the Metabones adapter if you're looking to do video, unless you're content to do manual focusing. And then you'll be fine. But like I said, for photos, on a Sigma lens anyway, the autofocus seems to be just as well as my experience on the Canon, which is great. I just thought people should know about the video part, because when I had watched other reviews about this adapter, I hadn't really seen people mention anything about video. They just seemed to go as far as saying, yeah, photos work great on it, so it's a brilliant adapter, get it. And that was pretty much the end of that. I may not have gone this route with the adapter had I known that about the video going into it, so I thought I would kind of put this out there in this video for people to know. I mean, it's a somewhat heavy adapter, actually, compared to the EF to RF adapter, for instance, that I used on my EOS R. This weighs a little bit more, and so definitely I felt that when I was using the big heavy 24-70 Sigma art lens. It's already a big lens that's pretty heavy, and using kind of a heavy-ish adapter made the setup feel very weighty. So something to bear in mind depending on what lenses that you're going to be attaching to it, if weight is a concern for you. I have certainly, over my time getting into photography more seriously, changed my mind about adapters. When I first got the EOS R, I was like, oh, it's going to be great to adapt EF lenses. You know, I built out half my collection of lenses with EF stuff. And it is nice for the versatility, but after I got the nifty 50 for the RF mount and just how small and compact and light it was like every time I went back to an adapted lens, that extra inch, the extra weight, the extra everything just felt a little cumbersome sometimes. And so certainly I can see people's argument when they say don't mess around with adapters like this between systems, just get E-mount lenses. There's something to that, but obviously this has a place in anybody's camera bag if you have a lot of money into EF lenses, and they're Sigma particularly, and so there's a good shot that they could work on your Sony camera. A couple things I also want to point out as far as limitations go. You do get a USB cable that comes with this so that you could plug it into your computer and use Sigma's utility to update the firmware in this to keep that ready for any of the latest autofocusing whatnot. But you cannot attach a Sigma lens to this and update the lens's firmware through this, which is sort of unfortunate. Like, you'd think if it can communicate with it properly, why couldn't it do that? I don't know. But you need to get Sigma's separate USB dock for the lens in order to update the lens's firmware. And as a note, just to rule out, anyone's comments, yes, I did, on my unfortunate experience with the not autofocusing in video, I did make sure that the art lens was fully updated, this was fully updated, and the A7 IV firmware was fully updated. So it wasn't a firmware issue preventing the video autofocusing from working. It just doesn't. So anyway, if there's any other questions that you have, you throw them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them. As far as my experience goes with this adapter, I don't know I may use it a bit going forward, but I have started to build out E-mount lenses at this point, and so I won't be relying on this adapter as hard going forward, but I will do my best to answer any questions that you guys have about it. I hope this video is helpful if you are considering this adapter or shopping different ones to jump between systems like that, and I will catch you guys in the next video.